I am a neat freak and a minimalist, but my husband is not and drives me crazy. His nightstand, dresser, drawers, and bathroom sink are piled with rarely used things to the point where I just want to throw all of his stuff into a dumpster. Help.
Well, don't throw your husband's things into a dumpster. That's theft.
That's step one.
Wait a minute. Oh, man. Well, it's funny because this is bothering Peg. It's not bothering her husband. And it's often that we project our own judgments and frustrations onto someone else. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some work that her husband needs to do. Maybe there's maybe there's an unhealthy situation. If that's the case, then yes, like you've got to approach your husband about it. But dude, the minute we come out with here's how you make your partner a minimalist, we will be, we will sell 3 million copies, just like Marie Kondo.
Well, I mean, the thing about that is what you're talking about is how do I get this person to change their worldview, right? Mm-hmm. And what you're really saying is how do I get them outside of their comfort zone? The comfort zone that we have is a killer, right? And Ryan is right that these things aren't bothering him, at least consciously. They may be bothering him subconsciously. Mm-hmm. It sounds like your husband is at least a level 1 hoarder, maybe even a level 2 hoarder. Ryan and I even had some level 3 hoarding tendencies back in our consumerist days. A level 1 hoarder, you know what a level 1 hoarder means? You have light clutter in more than one room.
Yeah.
And no noticeable odors.
Yeah.
Those are like the key signs.
No noticeable odors. So light clutter in every room.
Yeah, in more than one room.
More than one room.
And so clearly he's a level 1 hoarder. That's not a judgment, right? Mm-hmm. It's just understanding that most of us, we tend to hoard. We tend to cling. And you mentioned this earlier about the desire to cling. And there are really 3 reasons that we cling to anything. The first reason is we want approval from someone or validation or veneration. I need someone to look favorably on me. The other way that we look at that is we mistake it for love. I want to be loved. And this often goes back to childhood trauma in our lives, right? And so instead of pointing and saying, oh, my husband needs to change these things, let's talk about why he may be clinging to some things that aren't adding value to his life. Because you could tell him, till you're blue in the face, you should do this, you should do that. Here are the benefits I'm getting. But that's almost like talking to him about, oh, we're getting ready to go on tour in Canada. We have 2 tour stops, Toronto and Vancouver coming up. Now imagine, Ryan, if we landed in Vancouver and I handed you a map of Toronto and said, here you go, navigate the streets.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of what you're doing here is you'd be handing him your map, Peg.
Yeah.
Here's the benefits I get, but he may not experience those same benefits. He needs a map of Vancouver, not of Toronto. What am I meaning there? What I mean is he needs to understand what the benefits are for him. It's why we started our last film with that question. How might your life be better with less? Not how your life and his life will both be better with less. How will his life be better with less? Helping him understand that, because fundamentally we cling to things for 3 reasons. 1 is approval. I just talked about that. We feel like we have lost out on love somewhere along the way. 2 is control. This was my big one, especially as a kid, because my world was so chaotic, and it's still a big one for me right now. It's part of my program, part of my childhood trauma. Because the world was so chaotic, I clung to the few things that I had because I needed that sense of control. I needed to have control over something. It's also the reason I overate and I was morbidly obese as a kid. I could control the calories I was putting in my body. I could control the gustatory pleasure in this moment. And third and finally, safety or security. That's why we cling. We think that I'm going to be safe if I have all the right things. The control thing is fascinating because the more we seek control, the more things get out of control, because you can control all these different variables.
Yeah.
And then you realize like, oh, now I feel like I need more control. I witnessed this recently, Ryan. I'm in the process of moving right now. Bex and I just bought a house, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. We're going to do a home ownership versus renting episode in the future. But I'm great with chaos outside the home. I'm able to function really well with chaos everywhere. But in the home, it is crippling for me.
Yeah, it's that control thing, man.
And it goes back to that childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
Oh, if things are out of control, I need to be able to control something.
Right.
But of course, if I get everything in order and have all the right knickknacks and all the things in place, and I have everything under control, has it really changed anything? Has it made me more complete? No. The default setting in our lives is enough. The problem is we're constantly seeking enough outside. It's like trying to count to infinity. You can try to count to infinity. It's like trying to get enough.
Yeah.
Infinity's already there. You can't count to it. Enough is already there. You can't get to it. And so if you're starting with that state, if your husband, Peg, if he understood that he already has enough, then any of the things that he brings into his life, it's fine. Nothing wrong with stuff. Peg, you have some stuff. In fact, you might even have some stuff. He's like, I can't believe she has that thing. Yeah. And that's okay. But we can bring those things in and we can hold on to them as they're useful without clinging to them long term.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about reasons why we cling. So there's just in case stuff, which would fall into the category of safety and, having something just in case. Sentimentality, does that go back to the first one?
So sentimentality is validation, love.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. I think it depends on the person. Yeah. So every human being has all three of those. Approval, we all need approval. Sure. We all need to control to some extent. Yeah. And we all need to feel safety, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we think that we need these things, right? And it manifests in different ways. Even the Hadza, they need to have control of their environment to make sure they're not being eaten by a predator or something, right? And safety, etc. In fact, safety tends to govern those other two when you really look at the default there. Anyway, when I think about the just in case item, yes, most of the time that is, well, I feel as though things are scarce.
Yeah.
And because things are scarce, I need to control scarce. I don't have the abundance mindset. I have a scarcity mindset.
Right.
And so I need to cling to these things to provide me safety. Or another word for safety is what? Comfort.
Yeah.
And as we get bogged down in our comfort zone. Now, anyone listening to this has probably had this experience, especially if you share our podcast with other people. That's our most popular way that we reach other people. Certainly not through advertisements, obviously. People share it with their mother, their brother, their sister, or whomever. Now, you might have heard our podcast and you dove deep and you listened to half a dozen episodes and you're like, oh my God, these guys, they're onto something. This whole minimalism thing, it makes a lot of sense to me. And then you share it with your mom or your daughter or your cousin and they're like, nah, that's fine. I don't really see what you see in there. Now, why don't they see what you saw? Is because you were willing to make yourself uncomfortable in the moment. You're willing to get out of that safety and expand that comfort zone. But most people are perfectly content within their comfort zone. And you can't ask them you can't drag them out of their comfort zone. That creates suffering that they didn't ask for, right?
Yeah.
But if they start to see the benefits, how might your life be better with less? How might your husband's life be better with less? Because my guess is there's some sort of childhood trauma or life trauma in general that has caused them to continue to cling. And with that clinging, you get dragged and he's being dragged in a direction. Now that might be subconscious. It may not be like, oh, I realize I'm being dragged. I need to let go of this. No, it's just suffering.
Yeah.
And we hold on until we realize that we can let go.
Yeah. You know, Peg's question, it's very similar to some of the questions we have today, some of the questions we've got in the past. And really, it's about how to have a better relationship with someone who doesn't have the same thoughts about minimalism as you do. And, you know, I think that, and I know I was guilty of this, having this idea of finding like the perfect partner, the soulmate, someone who completes me, someone who, you know, is just this perfect partner. But the problem is that there's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as, you know, someone completing you. So, you know, when I hear questions like this, it's like, yes, I do want to make an observation about how maybe, you know, the situation can be approached a little bit differently to help ease some tensions or, you know, cut out a little bit of anxiety or whatever it is. But really, you know, what I want people to understand is like, it's not a question of how can you make this person fit into your life exactly the way you want them to. That is a poor quality question. You're never going to get there. So the real question is how can you work with someone towards something that both of you can agree upon? That path is that's in my opinion, that's the true path.
Yeah, and what I'll say is that we imperfect ourselves by trying to find perfect externally, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'll just heap these things onto me and they will make me perfect. Not realizing like, well, I know I'm already enough. And to me, enough is a type of perfect in a way. And then those things, there's nothing wrong with playing the game. If you want to buy a thing because it's going to make your life easier, having the app on your phone with the music or whatever, instead of buying CDs, like, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense for me, right? But it doesn't make me better. It doesn't improve who I am inside. And I love what you're saying about the better quality question there, Ryan, because instead of saying, how do I get my husband to understand that he's suffering? Because you can't, there's no how to understand.
Right.
You only set up the environment for understanding. That's how we learn, through immersion. And so the better question is, why is he clinging to these things? And it goes back to those three areas. Either he feels like he doesn't have approval, maybe that's from you or from his parents or from society, or he feels like he doesn't have control, and this is a way for him to regain control, at least theoretically. Of course, that never works. It never gives us actual control. The best way to get control, to gain control, is to let go of needing control.
Yeah.
Right? And then finally, if he feels unsafe, I doubt that's where he is, so it's probably one of the first two. It's either approval or the need for control. So get to the why, then you can help him better understand, not through a how-to, but setting up the environment for understanding. Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalist Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.